spasm of self-awareness, I awoke. I strained my neck, bit my tongue, flexed every muscle in my body until my joints jarred and my limbs numbed. I'd been in slumber most of my life. Change was forthcoming. I dreamt of my past, a past plagued with Tourette syndrome, a childhood onset neurological condition characterized by motor and vocal tics, a condition that has trained me to view myself through the eyes of others. During the course of my life with Tourette's, I've dealt with so many unconventional problems that I've been forced to come up with unconventional resolutions. Learning to lead a prosperous lifestyle despite this affliction was and remains an eye-opening experience. Tourette syndrome is a unique disease in and of itself. It's an affliction that affects 0.3% of all children in America, a statistic that's expected to double when taking undiagnosed cases into account. Domestically, there are 3 million cases of Tourette syndrome, but sometimes it feels as though mine is the only one. Now, in the past, this why-me mindset had consumed everything that I did, and it was only after I took the time to do research that showed me how 86% of all Tourette syndrome diagnoses share some sort of co-occurring condition, like ADHD, depression, and severe learning disabilities. Research that illustrated the complete destructive potential of this syndrome, that I consider myself incredibly fortunate. There is one advantage to Tourette syndrome. It's that I have been taught firsthand how to challenge limitation. Empowerment consists of confronting and addressing problems, not shying away from them. And so, I've identified a few key facets by which Tourette syndrome influences my life. The first of which is the physical aspects of Tourette's. For me, the tics seem to follow the course of the seasons. They peak in the summers and the winters and grow more mellow with the springs and falls. The repetition of this relentless single movement seems somehow inexplicably linked to stress, both physical and psychological. When I was 13, I developed a new tic that forced me to punch myself in the stomach, and it hurt. And in a solution such as this, there is no such thing as an immediate solution. I can't tie my hands or wear pads under my clothing. So instead, I took it upon myself to start going to the gym. And from a very early age, I did core workouts, and core workouts, and more core workouts, until I had developed the abdominal muscle mass that was required to flex hard enough, to the point that punching myself didn't really matter anymore. Now, this experience was enlightening. It taught me two things. One, I could take steps to control something that had otherwise been completely unmanageable. And two, having a shredded pack was pretty badass. Ladies, feel free to meet me after the show for any workout inquiries. And during the course of my life with Tourette's, I've stumbled upon a couple of unique characters. Just this week, when I was getting my haircut, I told the barber that I have Tourette syndrome, because as a general rule of thumb, you're going to want to let the guy with the razor to your face know that you might be moving around a little bit. But it was his response that was so intriguing. He said to me, "It doesn't seem like you have Tourette's. It just seems like you're incredibly passionate and excited about everything it is that you're doing." And it shows. And I like this. This is a reminder that inspiration comes in the places that we truly least expect it. A couple of weeks ago, I ran into someone from one of my lectures, and he had inquired about Tourette's. When I explained it, he came up to me. He didn't really say anything. He paused, and when he finally thought his words through, he said, "Yeah, I've seen people like you before. It's an easy fix. why don't we roll one up right now and smoke the Tourette's right out of you? And it's situations like this that I cherish the most, because these highlight this inherent good in people, this drive to help and inspire, even unintentionally, when they might not know exactly what it is that they're dealing with. When I was 16, like any other teenager, I was stoked about driving. But to drive, you need a driver's license. Getting one with Tourette's isn't necessarily easy. Weeks of preparation went into the creation of this. Interviews with students and driving instructors led to the creation of a complete outline of the local DMV test route. Now, suppressing Tourette's is possible, but it's demanding. And so every second counts. The areas in green are the places that I've allowed myself to take. Red lights, pauses to turn, or even exaggerated lane changes, where I wouldn't draw a noticeable amount of suspicion. I've learned to time every movement, to plan every route. Because for me, there are situations such as this where I am forced to quite literally map out my interactions with others. But I'd rather do this and address my hardships directly than shy away from them. There is no lack of difficulty. But there's always something that can be learned from it. There is always hardship. But hardship is what builds character. And that's what makes these difficulties desirable. The second facet by which Tourette syndrome influences my life is social. And as peculiar as it may seem, it has completely redefined the social dynamic that exists in my life, engineering me to be more sociable and outgoing. By nature, I was somewhat of an introvert, but due to the nature of my symptoms, I could never say that. See, Tourette syndrome is the most ruthless pirate to ever sail the 7 seas. But instead of setting his sights on glory or gold, they're fixated on self-esteem. It's the short interactions that are the most difficult. Those where it's too brief a period to explain Tourette's, but just long enough to where it's noticed. Waiters, Uber drivers, fraternity rush. It seems as though there's always this struggle, this contention between Tourette syndrome and my own personality, and one is bound to overshadow the other. I have to continually prove that there is someone below this syndrome. You never want to let Tourette's be the one that's doing all of the talking. I've learned to look at things in an entirely different way due to the fact that, for me, Tourette's doesn't necessarily encompass a disability. It always changes, and so my capabilities aren't defined. When considering the judgment of others, this is a paramount facet. Every time I partake in a process that is subjective to the opinions of others, like an interview or a tryout, I must stop and consider the ways in which Tourette syndrome might affect its outcome, and the best manner by which I can address that. For me, I can't deal with the perceptions of others unless I sit in a seat where I am judged, and do it continually. And this is what I mean when I say that I've learned to view myself completely through the eyes of others. Tourette syndrome always changes. So does the way you deal with it. So do you. When I was younger, I thought that these symptoms would only be temporary, because in some cases, Tourette's dies down with adolescence. And with increases and advancements in technology and science, I think I was just hoping that somebody would fix this problem for me. I grew up and I saw no improvements, but I was still living in this dream that someday, somehow, all of my sacrifices would blossom to fruition, and I could lead a life where I wasn't always in pain, good looks, I wasn't always different. It was just this illusion that I would finally be the one that was in control. While waiting to wake up, I was just running through life's motions. And so the true coming-of-age moment came with the realization that nobody else would fix this problem. It was just me. I was done waiting because my life was beginning. Now, leading a life that's tailored to the perception of others, I've come to a number of conclusions regarding judgment and why the way we deal with it is problematic. French writer and philosopher Voltaire once affirmed the idea that perfect is the enemy of good. Now, what he means by this is that perfection is vastly unobtainable, and our pursuit of it leads to the sacrifice or depreciation of things in our life that are otherwise attainable, realistic, or in essence, good. And as far as I've been able to conclude, this is the root cause behind our growing intolerance of judgment. Our fear of it stems from this innate desire to be perfect, or as close to it as possible. So when we consider judgment, our aversion toward it is in reality no more than our aversion toward flaw, or our aversion toward the concept of an imperfection. Ultimately, it is this very pursuit of perfection that leads us down the road to cynicism, and it's why right now society can't handle judgment in a productive or healthy fashion. If we digress to discuss judgment in theoretical or political terms, there's an idea known as the dialectical method. And basically, this is discourse between two different groups in an attempt to establish a single common truth. Thesis, an idea, or a point of view. Antithesis, the contention to that idea or point of view. Synthesis, the results of the clash between the two. Compromise. Now in the past, this search for compromise was conducted more formally. But as it exists today, this philosophy has manifested as more a series of personal attacks, propaganda, and defense mechanisms, and less of an intelligent debate. We're not seeing any progress. And the reason that I think this is so imperative to judgment, why judgment has been branded with this negative connotation, is because there is a false presumption that nothing good can come of it. Because we are unwilling to let our ideas be challenged, or even consider the criticism of others, because just maybe they serve as a reminder of our own imperfections and our own insecurities, America is adopting an aggressive, hostile stance. People are picking sides and sticking to them. Seldom has the nation been as partisan as it is today. This very pursuit of perfection is the cause of many of our very own detriments. By being unwilling to truly consider the ideas or arguments of others, perhaps due to our own insecurities, we are unwilling to reflect on compromise. And when we refuse compromise, we refuse progress. See, the truth is that most people are still asleep, in a sort of hibernation, if you will. There's this lullaby that we all grew up hearing, believing, and repeating. It's a lullaby that's sung by society, the lullaby of limitation. Now, this is because limitation exists as a natural byproduct of judgment, and especially the fear of it. This is an unfortunate reality, but it doesn't have to be. We're all assholes. Kind of. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And now, I know I didn't put it as elegantly as Voltaire, but hear me out. We can't take progressive action unless we first understand that all of the problems that exist today are all manifestations of a more systemic issue. And this is our mindset towards judgment. They take it from someone that has Tourette's. We can't change the fact that people judge one another, but we can change the interpretation of that judgment. Currently, it dilutes the quality of our lives, and it poisons institutions that are meant to work toward our own successes. If we're living the American dream, this is the culprit responsible for cold sweats and sleepless nights. And so the only way to fully eliminate our fear of judgment is to embrace it, to use it as a tool of identifying and understanding fundamental problems: avarice, discrimination, division. A tool to craft compromise. A tool to enable creation through criticism. Earlier, I spoke of the disillusionment that I had dreamt of, how I was convinced that one day I would awake to find a solution. Now, this solution came, but not in the way that I had expected. See, I didn't grow out of Tourette's or cure it. I coped with it. Among endless conflict, carnage, and internal turmoil, I awoke to learn one unequivocal truth. Despite the opinions of others, regardless of promises by scientific advancement, the quality of my life was dependent on only one thing: me. I awoke to learn that there was this impossible problem to which I was the sole solution. Now, for me, it was Tourette's, and for any one of you, it's something else. But make no mistake, everyone has their own fundamental, impossible problem. The only question left to be asked is, what will you awake to do about it? Ladies and gentlemen, I bid you a good morning. Thank you.